Hi, so in this set of videos, we're going to be going over the practice exam that I posted in an e-class. So just note, I am not going to be putting the solutions from the practice exam online, nor will I put these notes online. So it's expected that you kind of do this beforehand. And also, since the practice exam, or since the exam is on a Thursday, we won't be having class on Thursday. So I will mention this on e-class as well. But there is no class next Thursday, in essence, on the 17th, so that you can use that time to do the exam as you see fit. Um, so let's kind of go through each of these questions. What I would recommend, if you haven't yet, try these questions yourself first. Try them yourself first and figure out whether you can do it or not. If you're having problems doing them, or if it's all easy peasy, warm and breezy. Like, if you're good, then you don't need to go through this. You can just use this as a double check to make sure you get the right answer, etc. If you're having more difficulty, then definitely go through this and double check and go from there. So we're gonna start off with question one, problem one in essence. And so let's kind of start at the very beginning. So let's see how to tackle this problem. So we're given question one, and here we know that we're in the town of Bendrika, where 75% of the population are tourists. So I'm told 75% of the population are tourists, and the other 25% are residents, aka Bandrikans. So notice how, as I'm writing, I'm keeping track of the pertinent information. You visit Bandrika and you want to visit the tomb of the sacred, but you don't know the way. So you decide to ask someone in Bandrika and they give you directions. You know that a tourist will give you the correct directions 100% of the time. So let's write that down. A tourist will give you correct directions 100% of the time. But a Bandrikan who doesn't really like tourists, right? No one wants tourists in their town, will give you the correct directions 25% of the time. So Bandrikan will give you correct directions 25% of the time. You end up following the directions and you correctly end up at the tomb of the sacred. So you know you end up at where you want to go. And the question is asking, what are the chances that the person you asked was a Bandrikan or not? So what are the chances that they're Bandrikan? So first thing we're going to do is let's set up events. We'll say T is person is a tourist. Person is a tourist. B is person is a Bandrikan. And notice how this is the complement of T. And that T is the complement of B. In particular, we know that the probability that someone is a tourist is given by 0.75. It's 75%, right? We're told that the population 75% is tourists. And the probability that you're Bandrikan is 25%. So we can write this out in fractions if we wanted to make our lives a little easier. So what's the thing that's kind of happening? Well, you want to know whether you get directions or not. So what do we know? So the probability, so let's make G be given good directions, right? As in you end up where you want to go. So this first one is, you know that a tourist will give you correct directions 100% of the time. So the probability that you get good directions given that the person is a tourist is 100%. So it's 1, right? It's 1.0. That means the opposite of this, the probability that you get bad directions given a tourist is 0. Okay. How about if we have Bandrikans? The probability that you have a good directions given a Bandrikan. This we know you get correct directions about 25% of the time. So this is about 1/4. And the time you get bad directions is going to be everything else. It's 3/4. So if you want, you can do this in a tree diagram. We have T and B is the person we're talking with, right? So here we have 3/4 and 1/4. And then each one of these is going to have two kind of things. Actually, we can do this in one thingy. So why don't I do that? We can do this in kind of one thing. I can either do G here or G not good directions, right? So the tourist will give it 100% of the time, and 0 will be giving bad directions. And a Bandrican will give good directions 1/4 of the time, and 3/4 will give bad directions, right? So this is where these numbers fit in. They're the edges in the second part, and this is the edges in the first part. So what are we trying to solve? So the thing we're trying to solve is what are the chances the person you asked was Bandrican? So what's the probability that we have a Bandrican? Do we have any given information? Yes, right? So this we've used, this we've used, this we've used, this we've used. The only statement we haven't used is this last one, which is saying you follow the directions and you correctly end up at the tomb of the sacred. So that means we are given good directions. So we want to know what's the probability that we talk with the Bandrican given we have good directions. So let's calculate this. This one you should be fairly used to by now. This is just Bayes' rule. So we have B and G given P of G. So what is B and G? Well, B and G is just this path here, right? This path here is B and G. So the probability of B and G is given by basically the probability of this first half, which is the probability of B, times the probability of the second line, which is the probability of G given B. And so we get 1/4 times 1/4, which is 1/16. The probability of G is basically saying, okay, well, let's grab everything that goes to this G. So we also need to calculate the complement. In other words, when we get T. So T and G, that we have a tourist and they give good directions. So this, what is this? Well, it's this first line here, the 3/4, to first choose a tourist. And then we have to multiply by 1 to kind of go to the good directions part. So we get the probability of G given T. And here we know this is 3/4 times 1, so this is just equal to 3/4. So here what we have is, so this is Bayes' rule here. And this is law of total probability. We'll change this bottom part. So here we can either look at B with G, or we can add not B with G. And here we already have all these numbers, right? B and G is given by my 1/16. On the bottom, I want to add both of these together. So I have 1/16 plus 3/4. And at this point, you should probably use a calculator. And what you end up getting is roughly, so we get 0.0625 on top. On the bottom, I end up with 0.8125. So we end up with 0.0769. So we have a roughly 7.69% chance that the person we talked with is a Bandrican. So if you had done this in E-class first, as you should have, this should be the E-class answer. This is what you should put in E-class. And then you would submit all of this whole page, to me in CrowdMark so that I can give partial credit if there's any problems. So that is question 1. So in video 2, I will go over question 2. So I will see you then.